Welcome to DeTalks with Allison.
Oh shit, we're recording.
You are the best podcast naming person.
This is the show where we sit down with comedians and other funny people, make them take their vitamins, and ask them about their life or whatever else we get into.
Let's hope Charlie got it right this time. Let's hope Charlie got it right this time. What's up? We're hanging out with Jen Fulwiler today. This is DeTalks with Allison. How we doing?
I am doing great, and I have to compliment you on your podcast name. That is so... You are the best podcast naming person. You need to charge for this. It's amazing.
Yeah, hire me for your brand consulting. $500 for one brand name.
Yeah, I'm ready. I'm ready to do this. I can't wait.
I'm awkwardly sitting here with this sweatshirt on, but I want people to look at your shirt first because this is why I brought my ridiculous sweater.
I believe in dressing to impress.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to bring only the finest attire to the DeTalks podcast.
I had someone try to roast me last night asking if I have a Live, Laugh, Love tattoo underneath my cross on my back yet.
Nice.
And I was like,
coming.
that's the one I'm going to get.
Right, so it's Skeletor from He-Man, from the iconic He-Man series, in different poses, and it says Live, Laugh, Love. And there is perhaps nothing more in life that is more on brand for me.
Yeah, that's the perfect. When you posted it on your Instagram stories that you got it, I was like, Jen has peaked on her online shopping.
Right. This is
she's done.
If it weren't for the law, I would make this my merch. I would hire a graphic designer to redo this and just sell it as my merch.
As your merch.
I feel like it should really belong to me.
Yeah, that's you've claimed it now.
I've claimed it. It's
yeah.
mine.
Then we have a this is my ridiculous sweater. It's too hot because we're in Texas, but you guys can decipher this. This is a secret message.
It took me a full 60 seconds to get it.
Yeah, well, we'll leave it up to you. Maybe I'll do a Christmas episode and wear this, but I'm sweating just in my t-shirt, so. So Jen, what's it like to be a super famous touring comedian?
It's just that, the fans, you know what's crazy about it, Allison, is that at my level of fame, fans are so intimidated by me that they're afraid to come up to me. So like if you see me walk down the street here in our hometown of Austin, Texas, you might erroneously think that I'm not famous because people aren't mobbing me.
Right.
It's that they're so intimidated
They're
by
so scared.
They can't even look at me.
Yeah.
They can't even look at me or ask me for my autograph because they're so intimidated by the enormity of my fame.
So it actually is pretty lonely at the top.
It is. It's very lonely. Yeah. The fans, they ignore me everywhere.
You're just like, I'm just a Skeletor that wants to live, laugh, love. Can someone please?
I'm trying to live, laugh, love with you guys, right?
Okay, so this is a question I've asked a couple people on the show, and I think it's a good way to start. How do we know each other? And how well do we know each other?
Okay, the way you phrased that, I thought you were seriously asking.
Yeah.
Okay, your name is Allison. Yeah. And let me tell you how to pronounce your last name, because I've spent a lot of time actually trying to figure this out. That's a good story.
Yeah.
I just realized that's a really good story.
It's a great story.
So when I got into stand-up comedy, it was a very sudden thing, and I was all in from day one, and I came from the talk radio world. And I went down to a mic, and there was only one other woman in the whole room, staff, comedians, patrons, and she looked nice. She looked like the kind of person who might have a Live, Laugh, Love Skeletor tattoo even. And so we began speaking. The first person I spoke to in this world, in
the comedy world.
Not like Planet Earth, but in the comedy world, was Allison. And we've been friends and business partners as she was on my tour. I mean, it's just so crazy that you'd think it would have taken a few shots to find the person who I would become so close with. But no, just straight out of the gate. First person I said a word to.
It's insane. Well, what was funny, because from my perspective when that happened, like I was only maybe like a month or two into stand-up myself. And I just remember like when I went into it, I was so much like you. Like, how does it work? Yeah. How do I do I wasn't spreadsheety.
I'm so spreadsheety.
Jen has a lot of spreadsheets about comedy.
A lot.
But I was like, I literally creeped at open mics for like 2 months to just like understand how they work and like what the heck. And so when I saw you, I was like, oh my God, it's a female comedian I haven't met. Because like all the female comedians were just never at mics. They were always on shows or just not going to mics. And I wanted to meet them so bad. And then I saw you show up with a notepad. And I was
that's
like,
my people.
I was like, oh my God,
Right.
there's one. And
Yeah.
so like then we met and you're like, oh, this is my first one. And then I was like, let me teach you how open mics work.
Oh, I thought you were like a 5-year veteran of the industry.
1 month
I
in.
just assume you have that confident vibe. I was like, I shall sit at her feet and learn this art.
Talking and like I had been finishing up some work on my computer and you're like, oh, what do you do for work? And I was like, social media. And you go, oh, I like Instagram. Let's add each other. And then I'm like, who is this bitch telling me she likes Instagram with 30,000 followers? Of course she likes Instagram.
Makes it more fun.
Yeah. It's like, I was like, wow, no, I don't want to show her what clients I was working on now.
I know a thing or two about social media. It's a bit of a hobby. Yeah.
I'm just on there all the time. It's fine.
There's some hours of the day that I'm not on Instagram stories.
I quit my radio job to make Instagram sketches, but
literally that's actually true. I had a national daily talk radio show and I what I did know is better than that. I quit it in May of 2020, pandemic May.
Yeah, pandemic May.
To do comedy touring. I was like, that's going to be the move in 2020.
Right.
To do, because that's where the money is in 2020.
It's in touring.
Is comedy touring.
Yeah.
That was my big move in 2020. Yeah.
Well, we only had 3 weeks and then COVID was going to be done.
Right, that's right. And I was one of those people. I was like, this is not, I'll be on tour in September 2020. So you guys can all come to me for advice. If anyone needs life advice, predictions about how things will go in the future, listen to the person who said she'd be doing a big blow it out comedy tour in fall of 2020.
She crushed it.
Crushed it. Yeah. No,
sold out.
I did some amazing shows in front of my bathroom mirror. The crowd was pretty drunk, but it was good. It was great shows. Yeah.
Oh my God.
This podcast is brought to you by MSW Nutrition. You know those frilly looking cocktails we're always drinking on the show? That is from them. That is their Boost product. And MSW Nutrition is a supplement line designed to help support your body in as many ways as possible, starting with the liver. Liver health is really important, and a lot of people don't know this, but by helping to repair liver health, you're supporting your body's biggest detox organ so that it can do its job taking care of the rest of you. I always like to talk about this as if it's like an air filter. You got your air filter for your AC unit. Once that gets dirty, it kind of still works, but you need to change it out every once in a while or at least clean it. The liver is the same way. Once you start detoxifying the liver, it makes weight loss, hormone balance, all those health goals be a ton easier. So really, really cool that they start by targeting the liver. There's all sorts of supplements by MSW Nutrition. They've got some for mood, stress, energy, weight loss, gut health, immunity, and other things like anti-aging, all the stuff that you want. It's probably on there. Any product carrying the MSW Nutrition label will be produced in FDA certified labs, and it will contain the most bioavailable version of those nutrients possible. That's the other thing a lot of people don't think about with their supplements is there's several different forms of any different nutrient. And a lot of supplement companies cut corners by producing the cheapest one, which usually is absorbed by the body the least. So MSW Nutrition makes sure that they are using the one that your body will absorb the best. So make sure to check out their website at mswnutrition.com to see all the latest stacks to help you reach whatever your health goals are. And if you make sure to use the code DETALKS, that is DETALKS, at checkout, you can save 15% on anything you buy. That is code DETALKS, DETALKS. And you're going to love it. Also want to give a shout out to MSW Health Lounge in Westlake Hills, Texas. That is on the west side of Austin. They are the guys that let us use their How Do You Health studios for our podcast, and they hook us up quite literally with vitamin IVs anytime myself or a guest wants one. These guys follow the same principles as MSW Nutrition, as you can probably tell. They started the supplement line, and they're amazing. They know so much shit about nutrition and health in general. If you are looking for vitamin IVs of top quality, and quite honestly, the cheapest around, check out MSW Health Lounge in Westlake Hills, Texas, and let them know I sent you.
DeTalks is produced and sponsored by Big Laugh Comedy. Big Laugh Comedy is changing the world one comedy experience at a time. Big Laugh Comedy is the first ever company that provides you with a complete comedy experience, from live shows throughout Texas in Austin, San Antonio, San Marcos, and Fort Worth, to comedy news and everything in between. If you're looking to laugh your ass off with some of the best comedians in the world, or you want to know what your favorite comedian is up to, you need to visit Big Laugh Comedy at blcomedy.com. Get exclusive content and first dibs on tickets by becoming a VIP for free. Go to blcomedy.com/VIP-list.
Jen, I think your story is so cool. Like, anytime I try to describe you to people, like, especially now that, like, comedy is like open again in Austin and like everyone is coming back, like the local scene is back now, and all the people that have moved here, it's like a lot of my friends know who you are through me, or they've met you by now. So like, it's funny when people ask me about you, because like I mentioned to someone yesterday, like, well, yeah, she's Catholic, and like, and they were like, what? Like they had no idea,
Nice.
none. And I was like, yeah,
I'm
that's
making
kind
the
of
Pope
like,
proud that like nobody would guess.
I'm-
Nobody would guess.
I'm like, that's kind of her origin story,
Yeah.
like for like
It's
being
my
like.
villain origin story.
That's like her. Her anti-hero
Right.
origin story
Yeah.
on the internet, at least, like your internet stardom.
Right.
Back in the early 2000s. So,
Yeah.
like, can you just like walk us through? Like, I know it's like a crazy story, but like what got you up to the point where you had a blog that suddenly took off, and
Yeah.
just kind of walk us through like all of that.
Yeah, well, to give you an idea of how long of a story it is, I
She has
shouldn't-
3 books.
I was going to say I have not just books. I have 3 memoirs. One of them is it is a memoir about writing a memoir. Who does that? Who writes a memoir about writing a memoir? One Beautiful Dream, available wherever fine books are sold. A memoir about writing a memoir. Okay, so first of all, we should also say I have 6 kids, because usually
Yes.
that totally changes the paradigm.
That
where
helps
people
with
are
the
like, wow, I have to
Catholicism argument too.
reimagine. Right. I perpetuate all stereotypes about Catholic, like the drinking and cursing and having too many kids, and like that's us. I'm really working hard to perpetuate that stereotype. All right, here is the story in a nutshell. There are 2 threads here: comedy and religion.
Life.
It's fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I actually did humor writing way back in the day, early days of the internet. As soon as I figured out how to upload a website, I was like, I need to be talking smack on this internet.
Well,
Like,
and
I
you
need
code,
to, I
so
need to
you-
do right. Yeah, I was a programmer, and so
Yeah.
I was like, let me use my programming skills
To troll.
to troll. Literally, I was like, that. I love this, like, because I've just been trolling people like here locally, and now like I control this entire internet thing. This is amazing, and I had stuff that went viral, and this is early internet. I would get millions of views per month in like early internet. I don't think there were millions of people on the internet.
Yeah.
I mean, it was like 100% of the internet was looking at my stuff. So that was comedy.
You like broke servers and stuff.
I did.
Right?
Yes. Yeah. So I had servers shut down. One reason was traffic load, and then the other was copyright infringement. I still have the cease and desist letter from Mattel Corporation's law firm. We have a different idea about what parody is. I did something involving a magic 8-ball, and their law firm was just very aggressive with me, and they got my whole website shut down.
Wow.
So anyway, so I did humor, and then I just got I had kids, and I just got kind of busy, and so then meanwhile, I had been raised atheist. I was born and raised atheist. Never once considered that God might exist. Through and through atheist. I started out at Texas A&M University. And I would argue with these Christians all the time.
So funny to me that you went to A&M.
Yeah, and I won, by the way. Like I won with these Christians, and it was really the
deconverted.
blind leading the blind, because I would be like, oh yeah, if there's a loving God, why would he allow suffering? And these Christians who'd never, they'd never read Aquinas, like they don't know. They were like, no one has ever asked that question before.
Yeah, they're like,
nobody has ever asked that question. Look at this visionary, this genius. She's like shaking our faith. So I transferred to UT to get around some atheists. I was like, this is amazing. Bunch
Yeah.
of atheists here. I love it. And so I graduated, and then so I got married, and I had kids. Still never went, not for one moment in my whole life did I ever think that God might exist. And then after I had my first kid, it just sort of shocked me to think about things differently. It incentivized me to be more intellectually honest about what I really believed, and thinking through my strict atheist materialist worldview, because I thought, if I'm going to pass this down to someone else, I want to make sure I'm
Be
right.
sure about it. Yeah.
Yeah, that led me to ask a bunch of questions. And just like I did in comedy, I started reading and researching and doing spreadsheets, because that's what you do.
She's very much a Capricorn, for those of you interested.
Yeah, January 12th, yes. And then my husband, meanwhile, also he's a really smart guy. He went to Yale and Columbia and Stanford, like, and grew up poor. Like,
Yeah, your husband also has an insane story. Both
insane.
of you guys are just like, what the heck?
yeah, he's so like, and he studied in the master's computer science program while he was at Stanford, like insane.
No big deal.
So he was sort of a lukewarm. He believed in God. He vaguely considered himself a Christian, but like he wasn't church going. He didn't.
It didn't
pray,
prevent him from getting married to someone who disagreed.
Right? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And we got married here in Austin, Texas, at One World Theater. And I wore a dark purple dress, and my whole thing was I would not borrow from Judeo-Christian traditions, but so I was so mouthy about this, like we're not going to have anything religious, but so we wrote our own vows, but we didn't rehearse it. Joe he had a friend there from Ghana. I mean, like he had people. Joe knows everyone. He had people from all over the world at this wedding. Our ceremony was only 7 minutes because I did not rehearse it. And I'm standing there in my dark purple dress with these vows. I got very busy planning the after party, which it ended up lasting until noon the next day. So that was worth it.
Okay.
But
made up for the
we
vows.
literally had people passing out on Congress Avenue, like with the bums. So it was a good use of time, but I didn't focus on the vows, and we ended up it was a 7-minute ceremony.
Reader's
And my
Digest
Texan,
ceremony.
yeah, my Texan relatives were like, "Where's the bride?" Because I was wearing purple and it was ridiculous.
Oh my gosh.
So I started asking questions about God after my kid was born, and I just did a bunch of reading and research. And then Joe and I both became Catholic. And then meanwhile, I had stopped doing funny things because I thought you had to be boring if you believe in God.
Right.
And I just like got that in my head. And then it was sort of after a few years of that, I was like, wait, my background is humor writing. Like, why did I ever stop being funny? So I started doing tours and events and talks that people were calling stand-up comedy because I was being funny. I was using humor. And then I realized, like, I would like to actually respect this art, the art of stand-up comedy. People say I'm doing it, but I know I'm not really doing it. I've never studied this. And that's when you and I met, when I said, you know what? I love stand-up comedy enough and I respect it enough to not accept the label of she does stand-up comedy without getting in front of some crowds who don't know me. We'll see if I do stand-up comedy, if I can go down to, at the time, like the Velve in Cap City and like make those people laugh. So that's how the Catholicism humor thing all came together.
Yeah. And going back to like the time period from when you went from purple dress at wedding to first communion at a Catholic church,
big change.
Like I feel like I remember you telling me too that you the way that you like kind of started questioning things on the internet and like using your website, you weren't trying to drive traffic or anything to your blog. You just made a blog so you could comment on other ones that were religious and like ask them questions and learn stuff.
Right.
And I found that really interesting because, you know, you hear today, like most of the time you hear the opposite of like, I grew up Catholic and screw that now, you know? And it's like, but I appreciate that because after meeting you and then meeting a lot of your friends, like there's actually just as many people who are converting to Catholicism. Like it's a very growing religion. And so I appreciated that for you. Like you went into it in being yourself, being very inquisitive, wanting to know all the facts. How do I feel about it? And then like these people were able to provide you with enough answers that you were like, holy crap, I'm willing to change my worldview for this. Like that's something a lot of people can't do.
Yeah, well, and it's funny. There's almost like there's a known almost circuit of going atheist to Catholic, especially among people who are like in the higher education world. There was this woman, Leah Labresco. She was at the time one of the top atheist bloggers. And so when we went to a reunion of Joe's at Yale, she wanted to meet up and talk. And I liked her, but I was like, I'm busy. And like, I don't know what she wants to talk to me about. The next week she announced she was converting to Catholicism. The other guy who before her, like probably 5 or 6 years before her, was the biggest atheist blogger in like 2002, 2003. He also converted to Catholicism.
Wow.
So there's kind of a known, like we're a little squad. The atheist to Catholic converts, we're kind of a little
That's
squad.
so interesting.
Yeah, it's a known path.
Yeah, I really do like respect that though, because Reed, who was the first guest that we had on here, he and I got talking a lot about just like a lot of the drama that we see in the world, especially today, whether it's COVID, whether it's local comedy drama, whether it's politics, whatever it is, like it feels like everything is so, but like problem is because so many people are tied to their opinions and their beliefs and they like identify with those. And a religious one is such an identifier for people. So like,
Right.
did you like have those like weird nights where you were just like, who am I? What the heck is going on? Like, am I actually considering this? Was that like a big shake for you?
Oh, so much so that when for the first time I ever bought a Bible, because we didn't have Bibles in my
Yeah.
house growing up. We never had a Bible. Why would
Yeah.
we have a Bible? So I mean, this was like I had kids, or at least I had my one kid at this point. And when I first bought a Bible at Barnes & Noble in Westlake and Austin, I loudly asked for a gift receipt because it was so mortifying to me I really felt like it's like if you've always played for one football team and you
Yeah.
have your big rival team and how gross it would feel to put on the other team's jersey. Because keep in mind, I did not have good experiences with
Yeah.
Christians. I was an only child. I moved around a lot as a kid. And unfortunately, we managed to hit all the parts of the country with like hypocrite Christians.
Yeah.
And so I actually actively disliked Christians.
Right.
And so when I bought a Bible, it was very identity shaking for me. And that's why that first blog you mentioned I started, I did not use my first and last name. I was just Jennifer F. because I did not want, it was mortifying to me,
Yeah.
that I was associating with Christians.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's something so interesting. And like, it's honestly something that I really appreciate about you is like, I mean, personally, I grew up, I think I'm one of like the lucky ones that grew up in a really loving Christian situation. Not only like was my household great, but like my my church was great
Oh,
too.
that's
You
wonderful.
know, cuz like there's so many times where like the household is great and maybe the family has this belief, but then you go to church and it's like, "Oh, well like maybe we disagree with these things, but that's okay. Like we're just going to keep." And it's like I just felt perfectly aligned with everything when I would go to church. Like everyone was nice, but I've definitely run into people since then that, like, kind of exhibit those, like, hypocritical Christians, and, like, I just appreciate with you so much that, like, you're real and authentic, but you're also true to, like, your beliefs, but you're not an asshole about them.
Well,
Like
if I were better at being fake, that, I might have considered it. Probably could have gotten some better speaking engagements, like been a keynote more often. I'm just bad at being fake. Like I kind of tried that for a while in the blog world, like acting like I had it all together.
Hyper
And it was
motivational.
such an obvious lie that I was like, you know what? I just have to be real because I don't have another option here.
Yeah. Yeah, it's quite impressive that you have 6 kids and still are able to do comedy. Like, I see people leaving comments like that for you all the time, but,
Yeah.
like, another thing that I really appreciate about you is, like, you are very vocal about how moms don't take enough care of themselves most of the
Yes.
time, both in the fact of just self-care, like alone time or, literally, like, pampering yourself or just not even pampering, but, like, making sure to eat and sleep enough,
Yeah.
But also on the side of, like, how literally for most of humanity, we had tribes that would all help raise the kids, and now the mom is or the dad, whoever the stay-at-home parent is, if you get to have one, is, like,
Right.
expected to do all of it,
Right.
you know?
People talk about, someone asked me a while back, like, what is at the end of the day, like you're on your deathbed, you're reviewing especially from a career perspective. And if you were to just be thrilled with the impact you had, like you left one mark on the world and you're just thrilled with that legacy, what would it be? And I know what my answer is. If I do one thing with my comedy career and just any aspect of my public presence, if I just get a few more women to understand that you were not meant to raise kids alone, and that
Mm.
the pain you feel is not because you're screwing up. It's not because you're a bad mom. It's not because you're not trying hard enough. It is because you are living in a very unnatural situation. You weren't meant to do this alone. And if I can just get a few more women to get that and give themselves a break and get the time they need, even if it means letting Netflix be your babysitter, then I feel like my whole career has been worth it.
Yeah, and that's super important and, like, something that I've heard people, like, in the alternative health space kinda talk about a little bit, like, it's, like, the tribe mentality and get your tribe and, maybe, like, it's kind of a weird thing with the entrepreneurs in town right now where they're, like, all buying, like, the same houses on one cul-de-sac, so it's, like, 4 or 5 families that are all friends, and then you can, like, help each other out with whatever, but, like, someone who is living in Round Rock, Texas, like, in a situation very similar to the one I grew up in, like, my mom was never told that,
Yeah.
like, and you're reaching so many people that are in suburbs that, like, do think that they're going crazy because their friends all have kids and look like they have it all together. And in reality, we probably don't, like no one does.
Yeah, the angst among modern moms cannot be overstated. And also just another thing that comes with doing it alone, like you mentioned, and I talk about this all the time, that you would get your mores, your understanding of how do you get babies to sleep at night? What do you do when your kid is acting crazy? What do you do for discipline? I mean, do you spank? Do you not spank? Those decisions were just handed to our ancestors. It's
Yeah.
the way our community does things. Maybe sometimes they were even crappy decisions, but
Yeah.
they were handed to them by their ancestors. And so you just didn't constantly have to reinvent the wheel and second guess everything you're doing. And so moms not only don't have that day-to-day support of having your kids can just run around outside with the tribe unsupervised, but you have to rethink every single decision you ever make. And modern moms they're miserable in a lot of ways, but because they can't articulate what is going on with them, they think, I'm not appreciative enough of motherhood.
Yeah.
This is my fault. I'm
Yeah.
a bad mom. I'm not checked in enough. And I just want to scream, no, you're not doing anything wrong. It is your
Yeah.
circumstances. It's not you.
Yeah. I mean, that comes back to just the thing that we say here all the time at MSW Lounge, by the way, is where we're hanging. We're not getting IVs today. We might need
I
to
was like, I don't know.
might need to get into that in a minute.
Yeah,
But yeah, we always say that is like, it's the thing of you can't pour from an empty cup.
Right.
Like, both of us are workaholics.
Totally.
We're both Capricorn, like insane people who do too much stuff. But like, that's the thing that even if we're texting each other at 3 a.m.
And we do like pretty regularly. I'll text Allison 2:15 a.m. and I see the dot.
the dot immediately, and I'm just like, dang it, yeah, I'm still awake. Who thought I was gonna go to bed?
Right.
But then we'll both sleep in until noon the next day. We figure out how to shift it, right?
Yep.
Like it's important. You can't take care of someone else if you're at the end of your rope.
100%.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people they've heard that, but then they feel self-indulgent when they try to put it into practice. Because a mom might say, yes, it would be nice for me to get some time to myself, but how would I do that? We're broke. Like I can't afford a babysitter, so I guess I just have to grind it out, make it work. And what I would say is like, if you have to put your kids in front of Netflix, put them in front of Netflix.
Yeah.
Like maybe it's not ideal. It's not how any of us would plan our lives to let your toddlers watch 3 hours of Netflix because you needed to just scroll Instagram and stare at a wall for that time. But you got to look at the cost benefit ratio. Like you being depressed and miserable all the time also comes at a cost.
The
and
kids are gonna notice
yeah,
that
right,
too.
right. And let me tell you, I have like I use screens pretty heavily in my house, and my kids are old enough now that we're starting to see the fruits of the experiment, and they're doing all right. Like we are a lab. My house, the Fulwiler house, is a test lab for how much can you actually let kids sit in front of screens before their brains actually melt. And my two oldest, they go to a college prep school, all A's, like honor roll. They're crushing it. So, hey,
Your
look,
kids
all
are
those people who
great.
try to scare you about screens, like
You've got like
I've done the
every
experiment.
personality type in your group of kids
Yeah.
too. They're all
Oh,
like.
yeah.
And I just remember my mom and I went over to your house one time for dinner before we went on tour. And my mom like disappeared for 20 minutes, and we were like, "Where did Patty go?" Like,
Yeah.
and she's just amongst the kids
Oh, it's so great.
upstairs on the swing. You have a swing upstairs,
Yeah.
and like the
Yeah.
my mom's like pushing the kids on the swing.
Yeah. So
I'm like,
crazy.
Patty.
I know. And that's another thing that and for people listening to who maybe they don't have kids, but they're thinking about having kids, especially for women. So many women, especially in comedy, think, well, that's it. When I have kids, I have to roll it up.
Yeah.
Because the society will tell you that your kids they're a burden. It's like something on your to-do list. You'll never have time to work on your comedy or whatever. But you should see your family as your squad, as your gang, as your tribe. Like I bring my kids in. Let me just tell you, if you can make your own tween and teen children laugh, you are actually a funny person. Like that is the toughest audience you will ever perform for. And honestly, it really has helped me with my material that I'll go through stuff and my kids are like, Mom, that's not funny. But then I'll hit something and they'll be like, okay, that's actually really funny. And what's interesting is the clubs bear that out. When my kids say something is funny, it tends to kill in the clubs.
Yeah, well, that was actually something I want to get into, like your processes a little bit, because I mean, I don't think people realize we met in 2019.
18.
Sorry, 2018, and then a year and a half later was when we went on tour.
1 year.
because
Yeah, well, yeah, I
yeah,
guess, no, you're right. It was a year
it
and
was
a
a
half.
year and a half
Yeah,
because it was
yeah,
in the
yeah,
fall and we met in the spring. But
yeah.
like it's crazy because like you had just started comedy and then you had an hour of horrible material in a year and a half, which is insane for any comedian. But
Also,
like,
I was on the radio 2
I-
hours a day,
but you were on
every
the
weekday.
yeah, and so
Yeah.
you're working on that. But did you feel like I know we talked about it like a little bit because I know the radio show in itself was its own prep and execution, and it took a lot of time every day. But like, did you find that having to be so fast at producing that type of material helped you with comedy?
Yeah, radio taught me a lot about the creative process and just ship and just get it out there, try something. And the other thing is, I had been doing humor in talks. So whenever I did a talk, it would be, how can I make this funny? And so
Yeah.
I had some experience with performing comedy, but so what I had to do is I did hit this wall when I realized I wanted to tour. And what's interesting, there are two major God things that I'm totally convinced was a God thing. One was meeting you, because actually I want to go on this tangent for a second, that my tour would not have worked without you. I need to brag on you for a second. So I needed like 5 staff members, and I could afford none of them, because what people have to understand, I booked this tour with my own
She
personal credit
self-produced
cards.
it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I literally called, like, my friend Hallie Lord and I called, like, we would call a theater in Columbus, Ohio, and be like, "Hey,
We
we
have
were
a
at your
credit
theater.
card."
I have a credit card. Dates? Yeah, I don't know when. Like, do you have anything in October? I don't know." And then they'd come back to us like, "Where's your rider?" I had to Google what is
What's
a
a
rider.
rider?
They'd
The
be
day
like,
that you
"Where's
found out about a rider
right?"
killed me. I was like, Jen.
What? And then we had to get event insurance. That's a whole thing. And then, like, so I am licensed to sell liquor in Rockville, Maryland,
Oh yeah,
because
because
I
we
had to
had
get a
this.
liquor license to have. And like, we have a guy with a card table who I hired through my liquor license. It was so just pulled together with duct tape and bubble gum. And so, and I would show up and do sound check. Go to cities I'd never been to, a theater
Yeah.
I'd never been to, do sound check, light check, everything. So I needed an opener or host, or I don't even know the terms. So I needed someone who could do really good comedy, warm up the crowd, but then who could also, like, if I'm like, can you do sound check, because these light guys are killing me, like they're going to overlight me again. And so Allison could do everything. And again, she was the first person I spoke to when I went to a mic. That tour, I couldn't have done it if I needed someone who could do comedy, but who could also be like my right hand woman to get all the business stuff done as well.
Yeah.
It would not have worked without you. It was such a godsend. And then the second is that I should have taken, in theory, people would say, well, you can't come up with an hour of material in less than a year when you're
Yeah.
first starting. Something told me. People were like, just start your tour in summer 2020. That's what everyone told me. They said, do
No.
summer 2020. So I had, you can call it a premonition, a God thing, whatever. I was like, I can't explain it, but I have to start in fall 2019. And I was
Yeah.
obsessed. And you saw how obsessed I was. I would
Yeah.
not listen to people were like, you're killing yourself. You're working too hard. I was like, I can't explain it, but this tour has to start in fall 2019. And by the way, it ended 2 weeks before lockdown.
Well,
2 weeks
2 weeks
before
before
lockdown was the last
lockdown
date.
because we were in New York City at the end of January, and
Mhm.
I just remember meeting up with my friend Kelsey Fritz in the Bowery. We met up at some bar down there.
Yeah, January 2020.
Yep. End of January
Yeah.
2020. And I remember walking back to the subway with her afterwards, and we saw a group of people in masks.
Yeah.
And she was like, she made a comment like, I just don't understand why everyone's freaking out. If it's in New York, we all already have it. And I'm just like, Kelsey Fritz, you fucked us up.
Right.
Kelsey
Right.
Fritz,
Shut your mouth.
I'm going to make this clip go on my
Yeah.
Instagram.
Yeah.
You called it, and you also are the reason there's COVID in New York City. That's all I'm
Yep.
saying. I'm
Yeah,
not,
if she just hadn't made that comment,
but no, it was so wild because we did that stop, and then I had a trip with my mom, like lockdown started in New York 2 weeks later, I
Right.
think. And then
Yeah,
the
that's
South
right.
took
That's
longer.
Right. It was hitting
The
and
South
we did,
took longer
we did
because we
St.
had
Louis and Columbus.
St.
when
Louis
New
and
York had
Columbus in
started lockdown.
February.
Yep.
And then I had a trip the first week of March to LA and then Arizona. I met my mom in Arizona for her birthday trip, and we had this awesome epic trip. I brought her to the Grand Canyon, Sedona, all that shit. And we get on the plane. It's a Thursday night in the Phoenix International Airport. We're the only ones on the bus dropping off our rental car. We're the only ones going through security.
Yep.
And then there was like barely anyone on our plane, and we were like, what the fuck? This is a Thursday night in one of the biggest airports. And we get home, and we had been watching the news that morning, and my mom was like, this is weird. This could get bad. And I was like, everyone sucks. Everyone's
Yeah.
a
It'll be fine. Just
I was
give it
like,
a couple weeks.
everyone's pussy, you know, like no, you don't know what you're talking about. And then we get home, and that following Monday was when Austin shut down.
Yep.
And I was like, oh my God, Kelsey Fritz.
Right.
What
And-
did you do?
And by the way, and to circle back on, I just don't want to lose this point because I think
Yeah.
this could be helpful for anyone else. I know you'll have a lot of comedians listening to this who have trouble, because a lot of people are having trouble getting stage time right now. So because I had that premonition, or whatever you want to call it, that I had to tour in fall of 2019, and I had to get material quickly.
Yeah.
And I knew, having 6 kids, we homeschooled at the time too, and I had a 2-hour daily talk radio show. I couldn't be beholden to these clubs to give me stage time. Also, I was
Right.
a nobody in comedy. They'd never heard of me, so they weren't going to give me stage time. So I would do the mics. I'd get 5 minutes here and there. But so I started doing what we called garage comedy.
That's what I wanted you to talk
Yeah,
about.
so I would gather neighbors, my kids, and it's the hardest comedy performances I've ever done. You think you're bold, you think you're fearless in comedy? Try gathering your friends and neighbors in your
And
garage.
children.
Right, and children. And I would fill out a form with my set list. I'd print out forms with my set list, and I would have them all make notes. And I told them, I said, if you are tempted to be polite to me, I want you to consider that if there is a joke that is not working and you don't tell me, I will find out the hard way when I'm up on stage in front of a bunch of people staring at me and not laughing. So if you care about me at all,
Be mean.
you will be honest. I didn't say be mean, but like you have to tell me if it's not working. So
Yeah.
I would roll through my set, and it wasn't like a formal performance. I would just sort of read it. And then when people said, there are 2 things that were so helpful. When the consensus was like, yeah, that one's not, and they'd find nice ways to say it. Like,
Right.
we're not connecting with it, meaning like that joke sucked, like it was so terrible. I would say, we'd have this conversation where I'd say, okay, but that seems funny to me. Like
Yeah.
I'm laughing as I read that. So can you tell me, why isn't that funny to you? And as they articulated it, it would be like, oh, I just didn't set it up. Okay,
Set
what
it
if I
up
gave you the
properly.
backstory that the reason I have that opinion is blah, blah, blah. And they'd be like,
Yeah.
okay, that's actually hilarious.
Yeah.
And so it really helped me dig down on jokes that like should have worked. We've all had that where there's a joke, you think it's so funny, and then
Yeah.
it just bombs at the club. They would help me tease that out. The other thing I found is certainly people they will tend to be kind of polite. But, and this is a tip for any comic, if you can gather 2 or more people that you know, and video this if you can, but if not, just watch their reactions. When you read through their material, if they spontaneously react, like not hey friend, that's funny, but spontaneously, you're reading through, and however, both of them or most of them at the same time go, just let out a little chuckle,
Right.
that will work in the clubs.
Yeah.
And I always look for that. Like if I were to read through comedy with you right now,
Right.
I would be watching your face to see when you do and just uncontrolled, spontaneous, right?
Yeah.
And because people won't be falling off their chairs laughing when you're just doing a dry read.
Right.
But when you get that instantaneous, unrehearsed reaction, that will work in the clubs.
Yeah. When you told me that you were doing that, I was like, that's so genius.
Yeah.
Like, Yeah.
And you would be surprised at who in your life gives you good comedy feedback. There were people like some neighbors who, let's say, they're sporty type people. They're not analytical like I am. I thought, well, that'll be fun to have them here. That'll be nice. But they're not comedy people. They're,
Right.
But they would give me brilliant insights of, if you went a little further on this subject and came at it from this angle, that could be really funny.
Yeah.
Some of my hottest jokes were little, or like one of my kids came up with a tag to add it's like one of the biggest laughs in my set.
Yeah.
And so don't think that just because someone isn't a big comedy fan, or they're young or they're old or whatever, don't think they can't give you good feedback, because if you will just shut your mouth, stop explaining, and just
Right.
listen, you'll be shocked at what great feedback you'll get from people you know.
I appreciate you saying that, because it's I always joke that my dad is my ghostwriter. He's
Yeah.
never actually like written any of my jokes, but he got like so excited when I started doing comedy.
Yeah.
And like he always, like, anytime something ridiculous happens or he has an idea, he's literally emailed me jokes that he's written
That's
before,
so
just
cool.
like, I thought you might find this funny. And like the more I like talk to him about it, some of the jokes that I'm working on now or I have done before, I just bantered with him about it. And we forget, like, when we're doing comedy. I would call it the comedy ghetto. Like, you got your Catholic
yeah.
ghetto.
We all have ghettos, all of us.
It's like the comedy ghetto. You're hanging out with comedians all the time, or people who are with comedians all the time, so they all talk the same.
Yep.
We all are used to each other's bullshit, quite honestly.
Right.
Like, it's harder. Like, we know how to make each other laugh.
Right.
But then we forget that the crowds are not used to hanging out with comedians all the time. And the bar for making an audience laugh is honestly a lot lower than you think.
Right.
And that's not to say audiences are dumb. It's
So
just
true.
it's just that they aren't constantly being bombarded with jokes.
And they're not being analytical about it.
And they're not being
just there to have a
analytical.
good time.
Yeah, they're not overthinking it. And so you say something funny and comedians are like, "What? Why did that get a laugh? What like that was dumb or whatever." It's like, does it matter?
Does it matter?
It got them to laugh, you know?
Yep.
And so it's like sometimes talking to people who aren't constantly going to clubs every night or constantly on podcasts or whatever, you're like, actually, you're my target demo anyway.
Right. Exactly.
You're like, I want to know what the fans think is funny, you know? And so
if you're going to make money at this, if you're going to have a real career where you can get fans out, you can get booked at clubs, do theater tours, whatever, like get real people from this. I drive a minivan, get the minivan drivers out. You do have to start asking your aunt, who you don't perceive is a big comedy fan and is funny, your next door neighbor, the lady at the post office, like whatever. You have to get out of your little bubble of friends. It's great to know your tribe, to know the community you come from, to know who you're trying to make laugh. But if you want to actually have a real career, a lasting career where you can be a touring comic and have an income from it, you do have to know how to make people outside of your bubble laugh.
Yeah.
And this is shockingly, I never cease to be shocked by how painful this is. You have to ask them for their honest feedback.
Right.
And just listen, because I always want to explain, like, well, I know you said that joke doesn't work, but I was going for,
Right.
But when I just be quiet and say, okay, I'm receiving that feedback, thank you, and don't defend it, because I learned this in writing with all the memoirs I've written, whenever I would get feedback from an editor, the first time I looked at it, I was always like, well, this is sad. This is sad that he doesn't know writing or that she doesn't know writing. Like, because this is genius. This is like, Shakespeare would be intimidated by this chapter, and she's giving me this, like, screw that, like this, screw all this feedback. I'm setting it on fire. And then I'd sleep on it, and the next day I'd be like, oh yeah, she's right. Yeah, that was actually that's a good point. Yeah, that's really good. And so I brought that to comedy, that I have to wait 24 hours to defend myself. Because whenever you're getting feedback, you always want to be defensive. Like, but what I was going for, and if you will just not say anything and let them give you the feedback, and then if you want to follow up and explore it more, wait 24 hours to defend yourself, life-changing.
That's really good advice because, I'm just thinking about literally yesterday I was freaking out about work stuff and it was like minor feedback that I got on a contract I sent to someone, and I'm like bitching out Alex. I'm like, what is it? I can't. And then I was like, oh my God, this is literally like minor wording conflicts on a contract that I wrote, and I'm getting butthurt because they don't think my legal terms are correct.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm not a lawyer.
The accuracy of my opinions rises as time passes. And I've learned that if I render an opinion, is this feedback valid? Is this person being a jerk? Whatever. Pretty inaccurate, my first reaction. But if I sleep on it the next day, I'm like, okay, I guess that was actually reasonable.
That's fine. I get it now. Oh my God. So when we went on tour, we had some crazy stories pop up.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, I don't think the internet understands. This woman is legitimately a rock star in Sioux Falls, South Dakota.
I'm so famous in Sioux Falls. Like, I walk down the street. Shout out to Sioux Falls. Anyone
we love
listening?
Sioux Falls.
Shout out. I know we're going to get a vacation home there. We are. Allison and I. It'll be our home.
What were we talking about? There's like that place up in North Dakota that's like in the hills or something.
Yeah.
No cell service.
That's right. And
we
actually
need to go out there at some point and
that'll
just
be
write.
Our comedy writing cabin.
Yeah. We're gonna have a comedy compound. Yeah.
Right.
But yeah, no, I love Sioux. Like, straight up, when I was visiting there for the first time on your tour, I was texting Alex and being like, we need to come back here.
Yeah,
like, this is a beautiful town.
And to understand for the listeners how beautiful I find Sioux Falls to be, so when I started this tour, the big question was what's the first city, because that would be the city that I would have to sell the quickest. And I needed a good start to the tour so that I didn't commit seppuku if the first event was a disaster, because I'd never done a comedy tour. I did not know if my fans would show up to a comedy tour. I really thought it's possible I could sell like 10 tickets.
Oh
to
yeah,
each event. This is possible.
Jen had never posted any of her comedy on the internet
Oh yeah,
when
that's
she
the other.
sold these tickets.
Yeah, because I had to use all my good stuff for the tour. I had never. This was the funniest thing. I'd never proven to my fans that I could actually do stand up. I just told them I could. I was like, I feel like this is pretty good. You guys should. She's
like, this is my new hobby. Come buy tickets to it.
Right. I cannot. And so Sioux Falls was the first stop. I only had 4 weeks between when the theater was available.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, I know not everyone believes in God. I get it. I was raised atheist. But one of the things I was there for a speaking engagement. And I was like, I think maybe this should be the first city, but that kind of doesn't make sense because it's normally you would do like a New York or Miami, like big city where there's a big population base, can probably get more people out. And I was standing there. I toured the theater and I was standing in the hallway and it was empty, deserted. It was like 2 p.m. on a Wednesday. You know, this place is deserted. And I said this prayer. I was like, God, if I'm meant to start this tour in Sioux Falls, I'm really going to need a sign. Right after I said that prayer, random dude walks up to me and says, "Are you Jen Fulwiler?" and I said, "Yes." And he said, "I've never seen you, but I recognize your voice from the radio." He didn't know what I look like. And of course, he's like, "You're way taller than I expected."
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Right after I said that prayer, asking for a sign.
That's so cool.
Yeah. And so put it on sale, only had 4 weeks to sell it and sold it out very quickly.
That was one of the bigger. Well, it's like 350,
it was 350,
right?
Yeah. And so I am so indebted to Sioux Falls, South Dakota, because it just started the tour off. Like they were a really responsive crowd. I mean, you remember
they
were
nice.
So great.
Well, I was like, I mean, whenever I go to a new city, but especially like that tour gave me the opportunity to like go to so many cities that I would not normally have like.
Yeah.
Like I probably
Sioux Falls wasn't in your travel plans.
Well, I definitely am one of those people that wants to hit all the states at some point.
Yeah.
So I probably would have ended up going to each of the cities at some point, but like getting to hit the 10 or 12 cities or whatever it was that I did with you, like it was so cool. And I like to explore the city. So like I'm a dumbass. I literally was walking around St. Louis and I had an Uber pick me up somewhere and they were like,
I remember that.
They were like, why are you over here? Like I got in the Uber and the guy was like on the phone with his mom and he's like, it's a white girl, we good. And he hangs up the phone and I was like, did your mom think I was gonna kill you? And he goes, nah, she thought you were a catfish when your picture popped up on the request in this neighborhood.
Shut up! Are you serious? I've never heard that story.
Yeah. I was right by where we were performing too. It was like a couple blocks past.
Some big like tattooed thug to be like, yeah, but you thought it was Allison. Like,
yeah, straight up. Like I walked it. It was so cold that weekend that we were there, and I was just walking around town, and like my hands were so cold. I needed some gloves like really bad, and it was very windy. I was staying by the university, and I walked downtown to the theater we were playing at. And then I saw a CVS a few blocks up. So I was like, okay, they've got to have gloves. I walk in there and the cashier's like, are you okay? And I was like, it's just really cold. I need some gloves. And I got the gloves and he was like, you might want to call a Lyft to go home. And I was like, yeah, it's really cold. I'm going to do that.
Well, I think that was the city where we went out to dinner. And normally I'm like you. I have no regard for my personal safety. I'm crazy. I get myself in over my head. Like normally I'm with you on that.
Yeah.
You know it's bad when even we went out to dinner with someone and even I was like, okay, I've heard that this is a really like I think that we need to take you in an Uber back to your hotel. And I mean, if I am getting concerned about you walking through a city,
that was when we were in Columbus,
really,
I think. You were like, please.
Yeah, that's right. That was Columbus.
But going back to Sioux Falls, like I was walking around. They have this beautiful river through the town, and like I was walking along it, and I ran into some ladies that like asked me to take their picture, or maybe I asked them. I don't know. Somehow I ended up talking to these people. And they were just like, oh, where are you visiting from? And I was like, oh, I'm from Austin. And like, oh, why are you visiting? And I was like, oh, I'm actually like doing a comedy show. And they were just like, oh, Jen Fulwiler.
That's Sioux Falls. I'm famous in Sioux Falls.
I was like, oh, well, you'll see me on stage tonight, I guess. Good to meet you guys.
Oh, yeah. I went to explore downtown and people were stopping me for selfies, just walking around Sioux Falls downtown. Like, I love that city.
I love it.
It's fantastic.
Yeah.
But, and that's the thing. I think there's this great life metaphor that when you just jump into things and get in over your head, even if, let's say the tour I'd lost money on let's say the shows hadn't sold out and I'd lost money or whatever. we still would have gotten to go to some pretty cool cities.
Yeah.
And that could have been a cool purpose for it too. Like we met how many new people did we meet? Like you're
So many
connected
cool
with the comedian
people.
Aaron Weber and like a bunch of other people
Yeah, Jeremy and-
we've formed all these new connections, and none of that would have happened without the tour.
Yeah.
And so sometimes when you jump into something that is scary, maybe you won't get the financial outcome or the career outcome you wanted, but there will be this whole other like cool, awesome benefit that comes from it.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I mean, are we allowed to talk about your new agency?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
Well,
Oh, I'm surprised. How have I not dropped that
I
five
know. Well,
times?
I know. I was
That
like
what- it's
super
like I don't
famous.
even know myself
UTA
anymore.
represented Jennifer Fulwiler.
United Talent. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, well, we were just talking about that. Like you were. Congratulations again, by the way.
Thank you.
But like, we were both so excited for you when you got that. But then at the same time, it's like you learn so much about what it means to actually have an agent when you sign with someone like that.
Right.
You were feeling that. You were like, oh, I jumped in over my head again, but like in a good way.
Yeah. And one of the things that I find, when I worked in tech, I found this in the publishing world. I found this, and I find it in comedy. It's really. There is a big difference between people who, as they would say in tech, are B players, like people who they do a solid job, they punch the clock 9 to 5.
Right.
They're not going the extra mile. And then A players who are like really, you are an A player. And that like, I mean, I was like, I know how to spot him. That's an A player. And so it's been a while since on a professional level, especially that I haven't written books recently, that I've worked with A players, and signing with UTA. Normally I am the one who has to follow up with people like, hey, could we, you did need to turn that thing around for me. Where are we on this? They're the ones contacting me. They're texting me like, we need an answer on this. Are we doing this? And I'm like, okay, this is next level. Like these people are absolute pros. I mean, UTA. I mean, UTA comedy, they represent Jeff Foxworthy, Nate Bargatze, Gaffigan. I mean, Sarah Silverman.
I screamed.
Name, I mean,
Eliza,
like, name, Eliza, like Ali Wong. I mean, and I get it. Like they play at the pro level, and now suddenly, like I am so busy, like I cannot even see straight. It's insane.
I love it though. Like it's also as your friend and as someone who is in the same industry, like it's cool to actually see what that process looks like and have you explain some of those things to me, because like, I think the idea of like an agent or a representative or something like that is always kind of intimidating to artists, especially just because the music industry is kind of really shitty to all of them.
Yeah.
And it's different in comedy. Like it's not nearly as sleazy. It's not nearly as disrespected. Like it's a lot more like we're friends and we're all working together and actually all benefiting and all that stuff. But yeah, it's just a lot of things that you never even think about. Like when an agency signs, like what's actually expected of you and like what do you expect from them and how does that relationship work and who covers what, it's just a lot of logistics that like, I mean, no one's teaching people how to become a professional comedian.
Right.
And
one thing that I just cannot encourage, especially people getting started in the industry, to remember is that agents, they love connecting with people who are taking the art seriously and who are professional and who are willing to work hard and who are willing to show up. And a lot of times, if let's say someone is in the same room with an agent, they think, oh, this person they are so far up here. I could never, I hope I didn't just give them eye contact because I'm way down here and this person's way up here. And now, for example, I've had my same literary agent now for years, like probably 5 or 6 years. And she and I are just buds. But when I first met her, I mean, she's not only an agent, she is the vice president and part owner of this very prestigious literary agency. And so it was like, my hands would actually shake before I talked to her because she was just so like out of my league. And now we hang out when she comes to us. She's still my agent, but she's a friend.
Yeah.
And now I see her from this human perspective of, let's say you're a 25-year-old author trying to get your start and you're trying really hard. She'd love to meet you. She'd love to shake your hand. Doesn't mean she can necessarily represent you right this minute, but don't be intimidated by gatekeepers, especially if you are willing to show up and do the work and be a pro about it. Honestly, they are honored to meet you. Even if they can't sign you right this minute, they would love to hear from you and they'd love to shake your hand and say hello.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that you said that because especially right now in comedy, like in Austin, there's so many like legitimately famous comedians moving here.
Yeah.
And what's cool is like, I mean, I was hanging out at Creek in the Cave last night. And all like I had been at Vulcan with Big Laugh, and then all of us were like, let's go hang at Creek. We show up, all the people that had been at the Creek show were there, all the people from the Sunset Strip were there, all the people from Big Laugh were there. We're all just hanging.
I love it.
And there's Red Band's there. He started Rogan's podcasts. Like, there's like Annie Letterman was out last night. Like there's just all these people like coming and hanging. And it's like you don't like we're all just people. You can't like, honestly, like age has part of to do with it, right? Like the longer you're in something, the more you're probably going to progress and get better and meet more people. But it's like no one's in there trying to like be haughty. Like they're just out there to hang.
true.
And I mean maybe that's specific to comedy, but like and I'm by no means a gatekeeper. I book a local show, but like I always am so impressed and like actually happy when people hit me up to do my show because it actually makes my job a lot easier.
Right.
It's like it's the ones that are cool people. They legitimately have talent. They're clearly working hard, but then they also have the balls to just reach out to me and be like, I want to do a spot on your show. Hell yeah, you can do a spot on my show.
Yep. And it's like we learn from the rap world, which is where I learn all of my wisdom. Whether I learn from that or the Bible, it's kind of neck and neck, actually.
I was listening to rap on the way here in preparation for this.
They always say, like, real recognizes real, game recognizes game. One of the truest life lessons I have ever learned. And, I really, really felt this and saw this when I was trying to find comedians to work with for my tour, because I would say, hey, Allison and I are out here being pros and showing up. And I'd meet someone whose comedy was good. They did a good set.
Yeah.
And then I would say, hey, text me. I'd love to. And I pay what I found out just last week. I paid better than some major, massive national tours.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
you paid very well.
I paid well. I was generous. And so that was a good gig. And I would say, like, hey, here's my number. Text me. I loved it. I pay as well as I can. And you could travel and come to the show. And people just wouldn't respond, or they'd be super flaky. And so if you are someone who is actually trying to do your best and be an A player, like a lot of these agents, a lot of the gatekeepers are, when you meet someone who's got that same fire in their eyes and they're like, I'm not going to show up to your event so high I can't speak. I'm not going to get drunk and like, be stumbling around and embarrassing you in front of your fans. Like, I am a pro. I will show up. I will do the job I'm paid to do. I'll be where I'm supposed to be, when I'm supposed to be there. I won't be late. Any gatekeeper would be thrilled to hear from you and work with you. So just know how rare that is if you're that person who is actually showing up and being a pro.
Yeah, and also like the fact that you are like I love whenever we hang out in the comedy world and like you're meeting people that are like just starting out or they haven't gotten to go on a tour yet or something, but like they're clearly doing the work and you're like, let me follow you on Instagram, let me get your phone number. But like that's actually, I'm glad that you mentioned people like you would ask for people's numbers or you would text them and then they just wouldn't respond because like
happens to me all the time.
Well, I definitely I had like, this is a shout out to Rebecca from Creek in the Cave. Like when we were getting our headshots done over there, she was talking to me and she was like, hey, like take my email, shoot me an email, tell me what you're up to. And I emailed her, like it took me a few days to email her because I was like, how do I even, like you just said, here's my email, tell me what you're up to.
I still haven't emailed her. I got her, this was 3 weeks ago. I still haven't emailed her because of that same question.
So I was like, how do I even, and so I emailed her and I was like, hey, Rebecca, like good to meet you. Thanks for the headshot spot. Like, here's what I'm working on. And then I literally signed off with like, this felt very self-indulgent, but it's what you asked for. I hope you have a great day.
Nice. That's how you do it. I'll just copy and paste that.
Yeah, right. I'll just send her the same exact message.
Right.
But like, like that was one of those situations where like this woman like knows her shit when it comes to comedy. Like she has been doing it for a long time in New York. She's crushing
Highly respected.
Crushing it here now in Austin. And I wasn't necessarily intimidated, but I was like, does she really actually want to hear what I'm working on? Like, I'm just me in Austin doing this, whatever. And like, I've got some cool stuff going on, but I'm not like hyper famous or anything. But I really appreciated that about her too, that she was like, hey, there's some comedians I'm not connected with yet. Like, take my email. Let's be further connected. And like, that's a really pro move on her part.
Yeah, it really is. And and it goes back to like, it served me so well. And you see other people doing this, like, be curious when you meet someone new. Be curious about what they're up to. And when you meet other comics, so often we have this us versus them mentality. Like, oh, is this guy going to get stage time instead of me? You know,
Right.
very that scarcity mentality, as they
Right.
say. And to be curious, like, hey, how is this person's comedy? Maybe we could work together. Maybe we could
Yeah.
partner together, instead of saying, well, I'm definitely not going to follow them. They're on my turf. You know, they
Yeah.
went over time. They ran the light, or, you know, to just say, let me respond with curiosity.
Yeah, well, that's why I appreciate friendships like yours, and Destiny Lane is also
Yeah,
like
she's
that.
so great.
She's a comedian as well, but I knew her first from like the marketing space. But
Wow.
she's got the same mentality there. She was like, "Hey, we met because we were in similar roles at the companies that were communicating with each other at the time, and we both kind of quit those jobs that we hated soon after we met. And like instead of being like, oh, we're kind of technically competition with each other, we just like." We created a shared spreadsheet of if she bought courses for digital marketing or if I bought courses.
Nice.
We have all of our logins in there, and we would just meet. Like it was like rising tide raises all ships, you know. And Rocky, who on the podcast we recorded a few days ago with him, he had made a good point too. Like there is always kind of an element of competition with some comedians that you meet, but it's also, I think, more people are realizing now that like maybe it's a little closer to acting than we realized, where like Rocky's like, I know if I show up to a place and it is a black female comedian, like I'm a straight white guy. I'm not competing for her
Right,
for
right.
that spot. Like,
Yeah.
you know, he's like, if it's a straight white guy from the South who sounds like me and looks like me, like, probably we're in competition. But you know what? I'm still gonna be friends with you.
Right, right.
Rocky, sorry for the impression, but I honestly, you do have an accent, but it's great. But
but the thing is, even if you are in the same space,
it doesn't
maybe you could
matter.
do a tour together.
Yeah.
And because look, let me just tell you, the pressure of selling tickets, especially in a post-COVID world, I think this will last a few years.
Yeah.
It is the kind of thing that can cost you a lot of sleep.
Yeah.
And so if you had that generous mentality of saying, this guy, this gal is, wow, they are really in my space. I mean, we are just really doing the same kind of comedy, to say, you know what, maybe we could tour together.
Doubleheader.
And then if our shows don't sell enough tickets, I can be like, did he get his fans out though? You know, so like you shoot yourself in the foot when you reject people because you see them as competition. You can like partner with them and then blame things on them. It's
blame them
amazing.
later. Yeah, that's the. See, I was still gonna be positive at the end by being like, "Well, you can combine your fans."
Oh no, I'm in a very real space right now, Allison. I'm about to go back on tour, and I'm like, who could come with me that I could blame things on if we undersold these shows? I'm like, you know, everyone who was there was my fan. I think that they just, you know, they disappointed us.
Yeah,
They
you
didn't,
underdelivered,
yeah,
co-headliner.
Right, exactly.
Yikes! Yeah, no, I was kind of hoping for like, oh no, we're just gonna combine our
Kumbaya.
fans.
Yeah, right.
This is where I appreciate you too, because at some point there is like a level of salt underneath it. Still, there's the troll. You're like, I'm an optimist, and I want to cheerlead for all of you all day. But at the end of the day, if it comes back to bite me, it's your fault.
Right. And I don't publicly do that. You know me, like with my tour, there were things that happened on the tour that I could have blamed on other people. And I didn't. And by the way, I think that's sort of a life lesson that I've learned relatively recently that I wish I'd known sooner. Having that extreme accountability.
Yeah.
And just not blame, even if it really was someone else's fault, and
Right.
saying, but this is on me. I'm in charge of my life. I'm in charge of how I react to things. And like with the tour, like this is my tour. And yes, XYZ person, maybe I didn't read the rider at all and said
Right.
they like lied to my face about reading the rider. Maybe
Right.
that's something that could have happened. But I would say, well, that was on me because I should have double checked that. And I'm not going to go mouth off about this theater did that, or like, I'll just take accountability for it. It brings you a lot of peace.
Well,
just,
yeah.
you know.
Well, I mean, in all reality, you joke about being like, "Oh, it's their fault." You're never like that. Anytime you have ever hit me up and been freaking out, you're like, "I'm such a mess. I can't believe I committed to this, and I can't believe I planned that, and I can't believe." And I'm just like, Jen, like, slow down for half a second. Like, these are, you know, like.
And that was like 30 minutes ago that I was doing that. See, I mean, this is very recent moment.
We started the podcast, and I was like, "Are you sure you want to record today?"
Yeah, I'm wound up. Up.
But you know, I appreciate that because, like, yeah, there are legitimate situations where you are justified in being angry with someone else because they very much did something. But at the end of the day, it does cause you way more energy than it's worth
Right.
to be mad at them.
Right.
You know, I've learned a lot of that from you too. And like, it's just at the end of the day, it's like what's the easiest solution to this? It's for me to stop being mad and just figure out what the fix is. You
Yep.
know, it's me being mad is not going to help solve the situation. The situation already exists. It's not going to reverse it. So like, let's just drop the anger and like figure out the solution.
Totally.
you
One of my
know?
husband's business school terms is they talk about having an internal locus of control. I think that's a great phrase.
Yeah.
And it just means that your sense of control over what happens in your life is like it starts with you. Like you
Yeah.
are guiding this ship. And before I met my husband, I had a very external locus of control. I saw the life as something that happens to you. I was always playing defense. I just reacted to whatever was thrown at me. And I
Yeah.
didn't see life and the events of my life as something that I really had much agency over. And I've shifted that largely thanks to like him and his sort of the ideas they have in business school. And so when things go wrong, I always try to bring the locus of control back within me.
Right.
Even if it's something like I wasn't even there, 100% not my fault. I can control my reaction to it. I can
Right.
control trying to solve it. And like you said, Allison, it makes you miserable when you spend time blaming other people because
Yeah.
that's an external locus of control. Like I can't control that this theater lied to me about the setup. Like I can sit there and stew over it, but it doesn't change the past. It's
Right.
not going to change anything. But when I bring the locus of control back within me and say, okay, we are where we are. So what am I going to do about the situation?
Right.
It's just more peaceful. You
It's
know,
more
it's stressful to
peaceful
blame
and
everyone all the time.
empowering.
Yeah, empowering. Yeah.
Like, and this is totally an overgeneralization, but like I find it very interesting that like did that shift happen as you became more religious too? Because it's totally a generalization, but I see it feels to me, especially since COVID and all that stuff, like a lot of people who have strong faiths are like, why is God doing this, or why is God allowing, and that's an external locus of control too, where I've always kind of perceived it as like, I mean, I still believe in God. I'm Christian. Like I have always still felt it as like, yeah, like God created this world, but then he also gave us the free will to do with it what we want.
Yep.
And that's where it comes back to you again. And it's like, yeah, maybe this virus is doing some stuff, but like, what are you gonna do about it?
100%. I'm so glad you brought that up. I think this is a very interesting subject because I do see all the time, I see people using their faith as a form of self-sabotage. And I know
Yeah.
they really do they believe in God, they have a lovely relationship with God, but they are afraid to be the people they were meant to be. They're afraid to
Yeah.
put themselves out there. And I used to do this. I speak from experience. And so they'll say, well, it's all up to God, God's will. You know, maybe I feel moved to write a book. Maybe I feel moved to do stand-up comedy. But, I've been sitting here on my couch for 3 weeks and no comedy clubs have come knocking at my door. So it's
Right.
not God's will. God didn't arrange. Well, that's just self-sabotage. Like,
Yeah.
obviously, you have to be putting yourself out there and taking risks. And frankly, if you want to put it in religious terms, doing what God's calling you to do. If you think God is calling you to write a book, open up that laptop and
Yeah.
start writing. Like you said, we have free will. And so for me, the way that my faith has allowed me to have that internal locus of control and to have a lot of peace when things go wrong, and frankly, it's not my fault, is I really do believe, and this is fundamental not only to Christianity, but to a lot of the big belief systems, is that God brings good out of
Yeah.
bad things, like the crucifixion. Very bad thing.
Right.
We should not have murdered God incarnate. That was a bad move. But God brought, in my theology, God brought the resurrection, a very
Yeah.
good thing from that. And that's the whole thing with God is that
Right.
if something bad happens, it doesn't mean, my theology anyway, it doesn't mean that God willed it, that he's like, yeah, COVID, great idea. I love it. Let's go
Right.
with that. But that bad things happen because of free will, but God will bring
Good
good out of
it.
them. Like my dad died on the tour. You were,
That's one of the crazy stories.
I
Yeah.
was, so it was, and it was sudden. We'd just been texting. He was doing fine. We saw him every day. He took my kids. He was my free chauffeur. He took my kids to all of their activities, came over for wine and steaks once a week. And I'd just been texting with him. And the night before my Atlanta show, he died. Like,
Yeah.
internal bleeding issue, insane. And
And
so,
the last message he sent to you.
oh, that's right. I forgot we were talking about the Atlanta show. Last message he sent was "Knock 'em dead, girl," and he sent that from the ER.
from the ER.
And I didn't know that. I thought that
Yeah.
he was at home hanging out. And my kids were only some of my kids were at that show, so I couldn't tell anyone because I wanted to tell all the kids when they were together. But I told Allison, like we went out after the show with my aunts and uncles and cousins, and they did not know that
Yeah.
my dad was dead.
Well, because
But Allison
because
knew
he
'cause
passed
I told
away
her.
the day before the show, like
Right.
that
It was
night.
2 o'clock in the morning.
And
yeah.
then we had like noon blowouts or something, which is
Right.
very
Hey,
on brand.
Yeah,
Blowout,
absolutely.
pre-show blowout.
Absolutely.
Jen got me on the dry bar train for
Of course,
sure.
for sure. By the way, and the person who did my hair, we're super close on Instagram. Like, I love her.
Yeah. The woman that we met at the Atlanta show, because we showed up to this blow dry or the blowout place, and I walk in and you like definitely seemed off, but I was just like, maybe she just didn't sleep a lot.
Yeah.
And like you weren't really saying anything, and then I sat down and you just kind of were like, so my dad died last night, and I was like, oh, good morning, Jen.
Yeah, good morning.
What?
Yeah,
How
that's
do we
right.
deal with
I almost
this?
called you in the middle of the night, and then I was like,
I
"There's
wish
nothing
you
she
had.
Could, I thought about it. I was like, well, there's nothing she can do. You know,
Yeah.
like there, you know. So that's an example of like, do I believe that God willed that to happen? No, absolutely not. But God has brought beautiful things from that,
Yeah.
like just the way people showed up at his
Well,
funeral, and that many beautiful things
yeah.
came from it, even though that obviously no one wishes it would happen. But okay, so to take it back to this is a tangent, but to take it
Right.
back to internal locus of control, because I believe that God brings good out of bad situations, it allows me, that was key to me surviving that tour, because a lot of things went wrong. You heard
Yeah.
the behind the scenes. It's complicated. And when things would go wrong, especially when it wasn't my fault, I could bring that internal locus of control back within me, because I would say, you know what? I don't need to fixate on that theater screwing me over. What's done is done. And I believe that God will bring good out of this situation, even though what happened to me was objectively wrong and unfair.
Yeah.
And that, like, I don't think I would have any peace in my life if it were not for that belief.
Yeah. I mean, it's a beautiful belief. And, you know, even like you said, a lot of the ideologies have similar constructs. Like, there's a lot of like Native American cultures that are like, you know, the good comes from the suffering, you know, even if they like do their plant ceremonies or whatever. It's like we do these because then we can see like what needs to be cleansed, and it awakens us to the next stuff. Or like, yeah. And from like just like a meta perspective of just like how the universe works, the theory is always God is good, right? You know, basically any belief is like God is good.
Right.
But like if you are in the good with God, you don't know anything different. And
Right.
so like there's a lot of belief systems that are like, well, there has to be bad things happening so that we can understand what we actually want versus what we
Right.
don't.
Right.
You know, because if your life is perfect, you don't understand why everyone's complaining about things all the time. You're just like, life is perfect.
And you have no empathy.
And you have no empathy. And so you need to have something that happens to you, and hopefully it doesn't destroy you completely. But like they say, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And you learn from those things, and then you can relate more to other people, and you can like learn what causes the good things and what causes the bad things, and how do I keep, you know, like locus of control? How do I make the decisions that go more towards what I want and away from what I don't want?
Yeah, and with that worldview, you can just say when you get a hard blow and something just totally unfair happens to you, you can respond. But I'm not great at this, but I do try to respond with a feeling of expectation, like, okay, this is miserable, this is a disaster, and this is unfair. But I can't wait. I can't wait to see what good God will bring out of it. And a lot of times that is like, it's a lie, and it is through gritted teeth, and that is not what I'm feeling. But it is like a fake it till you make it. Like I've lied to myself enough. Like I'm just excited to see what good God brings out of this, that I actually have kind of started to believe it, and I can really it really helps the way I respond to the unfair blows that life will throw your way.
Yeah, and and again, just getting back to just the self-efficacy and the empowerment of it. Like it's I fully understand, especially this year, why it feels like the world knocked you on your butt. You know, if you are one of those people who has just been like demolished this past year, I get it.
Yep, me too.
You know,
oh man,
I
Oh,
get
man.
it. But, you know, there's still the light at the end of the tunnel. Like if nothing else, like you always have to just know like there's clearly more good than bad, otherwise you would be dead, quite
Right.
honestly. Like,
Right.
It's there's always hope, and especially in Texas right now. Like it's so nice to be in
There's not hope if
Austin.
you're in Canada.
Yeah,
but,
sorry,
but if you're in
Canadians.
Texas,
If you're in
there
Texas,
is Florida, lots of hope.
Yeah,
Lots of
we
hope.
won't let you in if
Yeah.
you're not already here.
Yeah.
But
right, yeah,
good luck.
build the wall.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
not for Mexico, but like build the wall to the
For
north,
the states.
to the east,
Mostly
and the west.
Oklahoma,
Right?
honestly.
Maybe the Mexicans will help us build the wall to keep out the New Yorkers.
Oh my God. Okay. Well, you aren't as in like the open mic comedy ghetto as I am. So I want to know, like, how are you perceiving all of the influx of people to Austin? Like,
yeah, I perceive that everyone in Austin is from LA. That is my current perception. When I meet someone in the comedy world, I just assume they're from LA.
Yeah.
It would never occur to me that they might be from maybe New York. But
Yeah.
When I meet people that I haven't met before, I never assume they're from Austin. I
Right.
mean, I just don't meet. And it's
Yeah.
interesting that there's been, I know plenty of comedians pre-COVID. There is a big divide of what's
Yeah.
ghettoized. It's like there's the old Austin comedy ghetto.
Yep.
And then there's I don't know that the LA scene.
The LA scene isn't
it's
a
not
ghetto,
a ghetto.
yet.
Yeah, I
It's
was
not a
just gonna
ghetto
say
yet.
It's not a ghetto. Yeah.
Because Reed and I talk about this a lot too, just when we're hanging out and stuff. It's so shaken up right now. Like, because there's the old Austin comedy scene ghetto, and then there's all of the new people, largely from LA, but especially like in the not yet famous but still very funny comedians group. There's
Yes.
people coming
Yes.
from a lot of towns that you wouldn't expect that still have good scenes, like
Mhm.
Nashville, Seattle, Tacoma. There are some people from New York coming in. We're getting some like
Tacoma. Wait a minute. I'm like
Dude.
Nashville. Yes, tracking with you. Seattle. Yeah. Tacoma has a scene.
great people.
Well,
like-
I didn't think that they're all horrible human
No,
beings.
no,
but they
no,
have
like
they have a
great
comedy scene.
Yeah,
Really?
yeah. Like some of the
Right.
funniest people I know are from there.
Tacoma tour coming up.
Yeah.
Show up, buy tickets.
But yeah, and then you get, like in Florida, whatever, right? Like middle America.
Yeah.
I almost said the Middle East. Maybe.
Right. Maybe.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I accidentally called it, not accidentally, I jokingly called Indiana the Middle East yesterday. And so
Nice. Good.
that's where that came
Good.
from. But yeah, it's interesting because like right now, like the only clique other than like the people that were in Austin pre-COVID is just everyone else.
Right.
And so it's like not a clique yet.
yes.
Everyone's
and
still
I love
figuring each
that.
other out. I love
I
it.
love it.
It's amazing.
Yes, because
There's no boundaries.
Yeah, moving around a lot as a kid. I mean, we just moved all the time, and I'm an only child, and so I have spent my entire life being on the outside of cliques. I'm always on the outside. I'm never part of the in crowd.
Yeah.
And I love it when I go to the comedy scene now that, like you said, there's not exactly a clique. Like everyone kind of feels like, well, I haven't quite found my
Yeah.
group yet. And I'm like, oh, finally. It's not exactly that I'm part of a clique, but at least I'm not excluded from one.
Right.
This is amazing. This is so refreshing.
You're like, I'm
I
used
love
to
it.
this.
Yeah.
This is great.
This is fantastic.
Yeah, it's funny. I think Austin's the only town that you can be from, but like when you meet someone there, it's just like, oh, so where did you move here from? It's
Right,
not even
right.
like,
It's
oh, are you from
never-
here?
Right. For sure you're not from here.
Yeah.
For sure you are
Yeah.
not. If you're at a comedy club in Austin, you are not from
Yeah,
here.
easiest way to blow somene's mind is tell them that you grew up in Round Rock, Texas,
Right.
or currently live in Round Rock, Texas.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
They're like, what? No.
No
What? Yeah.
way.
And when people meet me, they say, where are you in from? Like
Where are you
it
in
never
from?
occurs to them.
How long
that
are
I
you in
might be
town?
local.
That's another
Right. How
common
long are
one.
you in town?
How
Yeah.
long are you in? I live here.
Right.
I
Right.
grew up here.
Right.
Yeah, I've
Long
been here
time.
forever.
Yeah. Right. I'm here all night.
all
week.
of my
Yeah,
days.
yeah,
I
yeah.
have been here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had someone ask me like the other day, oh, how long are you in town? And I'm like, for the foreseeable forever.
Yes.
Like it's my whole family's here.
Yeah, and so I know that there's probably a temptation among Austin comics, among the people who were, they did a lot of hard work in
Yeah.
the scene pre-COVID. And I know that I actually have not had this confirmed because I'm not that deep in the scene, but I would imagine that maybe there are some feelings of like, wow, all these people are coming in from LA, taking
Yeah.
our spots, we're not getting booked. And,
Yeah.
but you really have to. I've been in enough industries, I worked in tech, like when the crashes happened and all that. I've been in enough industries and I've seen enough upheaval to know the best thing to do is you really do have to respond with curiosity.
Yeah.
I know it's hard. And don't assume that people are trying to reject you. If that
Yeah.
person didn't book you on the show, if they didn't reply to your text, I don't know, maybe they have an agenda against you, maybe, but maybe they're just busy. Maybe they think you're great.
Sometimes
and I
they're
think
just
we
very
choo-
busy.
Yeah, sometimes we default, and I do this. I'm very bad about this. I take it very personally if people don't reply to my text or reply to my
Yeah.
email, or I thought I was going to get booked and I don't get booked, I tend to take that very hard. And 9 times out of 10, I find out later it was nothing personal. They think I'm great. They're happy to work with me. They just got busy. And so
Yeah.
I would say to people who feel kind of left out, just don't take it personally and just
Yeah.
keep showing up and be positive and support other people, and you'll be amazed at what will happen.
Yeah. It's interesting looking at it from being really in both of the scenes. Like, um, and I don't talk about it a lot because I still feel very observational with it. Like I consider myself friends with kind of everyone. And like I hope I'm perceived that way too. Like
I think you are. Yeah.
I just try to be nice to everyone.
Yeah.
And like cuz that's all I think we should do is like put good out, you get good
Yeah.
back. And it's not even from a selfish perspective. It's just like no, things are way easier when we're happy.
Yeah, right.
And it's interesting because there is a level of that with the local scene, but there's also a level of there were a couple bad articles that came out when comedy first started coming back, um, interviewing a lot of the newer club owners that were not here pre-COVID. And it's pre-COVID, Austin had a thriving local scene. We had several local improv theaters that would always put on stand up. We had a ton of brewery shows, bar shows.
Well, our open
Valve.
mics would get like 90 people to show up. They
so
were
many
straight up
open mics.
shows. I
Yeah.
mean, yeah.
So many good
Yeah.
open mics, especially the Cap City one. And then we had Cap City Comedy Club. But, I think a lot of the misperception and anger first started when some of these articles came out saying that there wasn't much of a scene pre-COVID. There was. It's just very different because now, like, we had a lot of stage time, especially for the number of comics we had. Like, you could get booked a lot here,
Right, right.
If you were a comic and you were getting booked a lot, you were very good. Like, it fostered really good comedy and people legitimately got very funny. But there was a certain point where you either kind of needed to make the decision of like, I just want to stay here and be kind of a local legend here, or I want to move to get a writing or a stand-up job or a TV show or whatever in LA or New York.
And so many people, they had to
And
leave.
so many people
Yeah.
so many great people had to
Right.
leave. So many great people stayed too and decided that they just wanted to foster their shows here, and that's great. And now and that's how a lot of cities in America are, by the way. A lot of people don't realize that you probably have a pretty thriving comedy scene if you're any sort of remotely close to Austin-sized city. Austin
Yeah.
only has 1 million people in the city. And I freaking went to Bozeman, Montana and found an open mic.
You're kidding.
I was there for 5 days. They have a once a month Wednesday open mic in downtown Bozeman, Montana, and I was there that
I will
week and
fly
I
to
went.
Bozeman to go to that.
I
That's
went.
really cool.
It was beautiful. Bozeman's beautiful, by the way. But there's comedy almost everywhere.
Yeah.
And most cities that are even remotely close to Austin size have a pretty good scene, even if you have one comedy club like we did. But now the shift has happened to where we have at least 5 clubs, probably are going to have more by the end of the year. And it's this whole new thing where like, okay, now actually the paying industry for club work is here. Like there's 5 paying clubs here. Holy crap. Like we can actually, there's a lot more paid club time here than we ever had the opportunity with just one club. And Cap City's coming back, by the way. It's not like they got kicked out. They had some struggles with COVID, but they're coming back. So it's like, the old favorite club is coming back. We have all these new ones. And then we have LA influencers who, agree or disagree with them. Like they know how to make it in comedy. And quite honestly, anytime I would go out to LA, I would be around these cats. They've always been nice to me. I've never had a bad experience with any of them.
Yeah.
And so I think it's just the misperception of Hollywood and probably skewed, quite honestly, by acting a little bit. Because
Yeah.
to me, coming from an acting world, like I grew up acting, I went to college for acting. A lot of my friends are still trying to get into the film industry in LA. And it's like such a game and such a ladder and such a hustle to like show up to these auditions year after year in front of the same people. And there's just so much gatekeeping in acting that I was floored the first time I went to the Comedy Store. And I think like, who was it? Sarah Silverman was in the hallway with me. And I was like,
Whoa. Yeah. You're like, what? Yeah.
what?
Yeah.
I was like, they just let her stand out here. And then as I was walking around, I was like, oh, there's Joe. Oh, there's Whitney Oh, there's Brian Red. Like everyone's just walking around and like doing their bullshit and talking to each other, waiting to get their 10-minute spot on the store. And that was when I was just completely mind blown. I was like, wow, there might be gatekeepers in this industry, but they are completely different than at least any other showbiz that I know of. And now
Well,
that
yeah.
they don't have to compete with Hollywood by moving here, they're just looking for comedians.
Right. And
you
I will
know?
say that the gatekeepers I've met who have come to Austin from other cities and they're opening clubs and they're doing shows, some of the most sincere comedy fans
Yeah.
I have ever met. And everyone should embrace that. Like how, because there are plenty of people in the world who think comedy's trashy. They don't like comedy. They don't support it. So how cool that we have people who are taking personal risk, oftentimes risking their personal finances to say, I'd like to elevate the Austin comedy scene. It was great before. I have some new ideas about
Yeah.
how we can maybe improve it. That is something to be embraced.
I mean,
not
honestly,
to be scared of.
you're friends with Brandon too. Let's
Yeah.
just say it.
Oh, yeah,
Brandon
right,
Lewin
okay,
with
so
Big Laugh. Like,
let's go ahead and name Brandon.
let's just say
yeah.
it. Brandon Lewin with Big Laugh. We're
Yeah.
on his network. Damn,
Yep.
you know,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
he
One of the kindest people
is so
I've ever
nice.
worked with in any industry.
Y'all's kids have play dates.
Yeah, that's right.
sometimes.
I know, yeah, he did a play date at my house. It was
Yeah,
awesome.
but like he's just, you know, when I meet someone like Brandon, and I'm good friends with this guy now. He's great. Like, it is to me so rare to meet someone who both loves comedy as much as he does and has zero desire to do it themselves.
Yeah.
Because he literally built a company around his love for comedy and
Right.
wanting to help comedians thrive and wanting to give more paying stage time and connect them with their fans and do all of the things that comedians want, but are honestly usually kind of bad at, or we just don't want to do it ourselves. And producing and booking and doing all these shows is so much work, and he just does it because he loves it. And yeah, he's building a company from it, but why wouldn't you? If you have such a niche skill set of loving comedy, knowing what good comedy is, and then absolutely not wanting to do it, that is such a hard person to find.
And I will say, how often, think about this. I encourage everyone listening to think about this. How often do we project our own self-sabotage onto gatekeepers?
Oh, yeah.
I have done this with literary agents, with bosses in the tech world, with people in comedy. If there's a gatekeeper, I get this whole narrative. I mean, it is like something like a Norse epic.
Yeah.
The narrative of how they want to destroy me, and then they think I'm trash, and they think my work is garbage. These people have never heard of me, but I have a whole narrative of
Yeah.
like they're stonewalling me from the industry, and really this is all in my head. All of this whole movie, this whole 4-hour saga is taking place entirely in my own mind. And meanwhile, this gatekeeper is like a really nice person who just
Yeah.
wants to do good things. And so I think people like Brandon, people can get ideas about them that he's trying to, he didn't book me on this one show, and therefore
Yeah.
he is the kindest, most generous person who is like, he is really trying to make the comedy industry better for all of us.
Yeah.
And I use him as an example, but this is really true of the vast majority of successful gatekeepers. You know, of course, there's always some random jerk, but like
Right.
if people get to Brandon's level, to like the people I work with at UTA, their level,
Rebecca
if you get to
Creek,
their level,
yeah.
it's not like you're usually a pretty good person
Yeah.
and good at what you do, and you love the industry you're in.
Yeah.
Like Rebecca, Brandon, my UTA
Lucy.
agent, they don't have to put
Lucy at
Lucy from
Zanies.
Zanies, love Lucy. They don't have to put up with any of this. They could go have a normal job, like where they're
Yeah.
dealing with sane people. They do it because they love it. And like, stop projecting your own self-sabotage narratives
Yeah.
onto these people.
And there's something to be said too about kind of what we touched on earlier about just being willing to meet them.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
there's and I'm running into this just with my small local show. People are hitting me up to do it, and I'm like, I can put you on in October, like already. You know, and so. You have to remember, like, there is no way to manage all the people that these guys are getting hit up
Right.
with. And on top of that, like, if they are booking headliners or something, oftentimes those headliners already bring their own openers or
Right.
hosts or features or whatever. So there's that, but it's just like, it's taking the time to just introduce yourself and be a cool person.
Right.
And you know, if they give you a shot, crush it on stage, you know, just do it. But like, I mean, even last night we were hanging out at Creek, and Brandon like met this new comedian, and it was the coolest thing for me to watch because the guy had just moved here from Virginia or something, and he was super nice. He was talking with all of us, but like no one knew who he was really. And Brandon also didn't know. And Brandon's like, "Hey man, what's your name? How long you been in Austin? How long you been doing comedy? Where'd you start?" Like, getting to know him. We don't know who this guy is. But like, he just wanted to know because he's like, "Oh, it's a new person. This guy's being chill. We're hanging out. I want to
Yep.
know his story. Let's go." And it's just a matter of being a cool person and then being willing to talk with them
Yep.
as a person.
And when you switch to like the religious term for this would be like, people talk about having a service mentality. We're here
Yeah.
to serve. I have gotten myself out of so many ego-driven spirals by saying, look, I just want to serve. Like, I think that I have some comedy that can just make people feel a little better about their lives. Like, just give them a laugh, like a dumb laugh about some dumb joke I
Right.
make their day a little better. And you know what? But if it's and again, I get religious here, but I'm like, if it's God's plan that, let's say, my stage time, that I get taken off the show and someone else gets put on, you know what? Maybe there's someone in that audience who was on the brink of suicide, and the comic that replaces me is exactly who they needed to hear. And this is easier said than done, but when you work on it and say, I really have a service mentality. So let's say you meet a gatekeeper and say, "Oh, you represent that comic. You know what? I saw that their show isn't sold out in my hometown. I'll get the word out among my friends. Tell some people to show up." So there's nothing in that for you. You just have a service mentality. It will bring you so much peace, but then it will open a lot of doors, because the people who do get hit up all the time are like, "Wow, that person was really cool. They just did me a solid, and like they didn't ask for anything in return, and they're helping what I'm doing." That can open a lot of doors.
Totally. Yeah, and I appreciate that too. Like, that's actually something that they teach you like in sales or marketing as well, is like so many people, and it's not to be salesy. Like, I know
Yeah.
comedians are like at sales, but like you got to know a little bit of this stuff, quite honestly, cuz networking is very similar to marketing, especially. You're marketing yourself essentially, and it's not inauthentic. You're still being yourself, but you need to know how to socialize.
Yeah,
and
if you
like,
believe you have something to share, you need to know the delivery mechanism for
Yeah.
getting it to the people
and
you
you
want to share it
also
with.
and you also need to be able to listen to others first before you just start being like, here's what I have to offer, like buy my 30-day program. But like it's something that a lot of copywriters make mistakes on. It's like how great our product is,
Yeah.
and bragging on our product versus, hey, do you feel like this? How about this problem we've identified that you have? Did you know it's caused by this? And did you know that this one trick can fix it? So you've already got them like invested in how it's helping them. And you're totally ignoring the fact that, I'm going to make money on this.
Right.
which might feel sleazy, but like there's a very authentic way to do that. Like
Right.
it's
Absolutely.
it's not even like, oh, I'm trying to meet you because I want an opportunity from you. It's like, well, yeah, maybe I could get opportunities from you, but also we should just connect as people because we're in the same industry.
Yep.
And have a
Yeah.
relationship.
And it feels good. Like, there have been people that I give them a shout out. Actually, my comedy special came out in November, and okay, I was actually a little petty about this, but there were some people that honestly, they'd been weird to me in the past, but I do believe in their work. So I had promoted their stuff. I'd gone on Instagram stories, "Hey, you need to follow this person, check out what they're doing." And they never reciprocated, and they never promoted my special. And okay, I do know I could list them all by name right now. I have half of them muted, but I do not regret giving them a shout out. And to be honest, I do it again, because I actually, as petty as I am about them not reciprocating, I even did this, a few months ago. There's someone that they have done nothing for me, and even when asked, and I have done so much for them, but I promoted their stuff again because I really do believe in it. I think it's making the world a better place, and you just have peace. You can be like, whether I'm successful or unsuccessful, whether I make the money I'm hoping to make or not, I know that I am out there genuinely trying to help, and I am doing the right thing. And I can look myself in the mirror in the morning and just have that peace of knowing my heart is in the right place here.
Yeah, totally. And that's the most important thing too,
Yeah.
is just being okay and even happy, God forbid. God,
Yeah,
happy with
well,
yourself.
I don't know. I don't know if our comedy would be good if we all like got happy and confident.
But Rocky made a good point with this too. Like, so he was talking about how The Rock followed him on Instagram.
What?
Yeah.
Well, you buried the lead. I didn't know I'm on the podcast with someone who's followed by The Rock.
His
What
name
even
is Rocky
that?
too. Isn't that great?
Oh,
But he found out he was followed by The Rock, and then he like posted a thank you video on his Instagram. He like, thank you, The Rock. The Rock reposted it, and Rocky was like, The Rock was
What is his life?
Dude, Rocky was like, I got like 10,000 followers in one day, like da-da-da. And
okay, I gotta go make my Rock video. I'm sorry. Bye, Allison. Have fun
dropping the
finishing out this
podcast.
episode.
This relates, I
What?
promise. So he was talking about this, and he was like, I can't help The Rock with anything. He's like,
Right.
The Rock is the most followed man on the planet.
Right.
Like, I can't do shit for this guy. He's like, but he did me a solid, and it was nothing to him. It probably took him 15 seconds
Right.
to hit the repost and
Right.
publish. And he was describing it as kind of a chain like that, where it's a pay it forward thing. And
Yeah,
he's like,
yeah, right.
he's like, he was talking about the guy that he's getting to open up for him this weekend. He goes, that guy went on after the headliner show on Tuesday at Vulcan at like midnight. And he was performing for the last 6 drunk people. And just because he wanted to. And he's like, I saw him and I was like, that guy's going to be good. Get him to open for me.
Yep.
And
Zach
And if
Bogus.
Zach Bogus.
Yeah,
Thank you,
and if that
Charlie.
guy
We
had
didn't
been
drop
too-
him. We didn't drop
If he'd
him
been
that
too
time.
prideful, well, look at this crap spot I got. I'm just going to get drunk, phone this in, like not even
Yeah.
care. Well, now he wouldn't have that opportunity.
Bogus never phones it in. Like Zach Bogus.
Oh,
is,
I keep hearing his name.
Yeah.
Actually, Zach Bogus.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I think I follow him.
You might
Yeah, yeah.
recognize him if you saw
Yeah,
him. He's
okay.
at Vulcan all the time. He works
Okay.
at the door there sometimes now. But
That's what it is. Okay, yeah.
yeah, super cool guy. But yeah, Rocky was talking about. He's like, Zach like doesn't have as many followers as me, so like it's probably not going to be reciprocated in the same way. But like when Zach in a few years is doing well, he's probably going to do the same thing for someone
Right.
else. And like, and maybe like I know Chappelle was talking about this on Rogan's podcast. Even he's like, last time I saw Punky Johnson, she was bar backing at the Comedy Store, and the next time I saw her after that, she was getting ready for SNL. Like she was literally on set for SNL. So you never know. Like
Yeah, just like putting goodness out into the world and just having a service mentality.
Yeah.
And I am the pettiest, most cynical person. So
That's
that
how we
I
get
am
along.
not right. Yeah, I am not Pollyanna about this. No, like my list of my enemies is like I'm like Rain Man. I can this girl, Allison, let me just tell you. At my 5th birthday party, she blew out my candles. And it was at McDonald's, and someone was like, "You'll forget this. You're 5. You're 5. I have not that. I still." Anyway, okay, so like that is my list of enemies in my mind is encyclopedic. I am the Rain Man of people who have slighted me. However,
I just want this
However.
woman, if she sees this episode, to
yeah,
contact
that's
us.
right. I wish
please.
I remember. I'll look up her name. I'll find. See that because I moved around a lot, so I don't remember who she is. I'll do that like the Zoom.info, whatever that always comes up, the people search. I'll hire a private investigator and find out who that is so that I can hate her by name. So I think I've now properly established I am not some Pollyanna person who this comes naturally to, but you can combat that nature. I've been reading these books who talk about you can accept your inappropriate or your negative feelings. So the negative feelings are there.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I despise that woman. We're now enemies and I'll take her down. And I can say, oh, okay, well, that's a feeling that came to me. And is that who I am? Is that the direction I want my life to go? No, because that, it just causes drama. Like we said, it takes you out of your internal locus of control to be all up, really busy hating other people. So I can acknowledge that is my nature, and I can say, okay, but I'm going to reject that, and I'm not going to perseverate on that, and I'm going to get back into the mentality. Like, let's say I'm going to a show, and there's someone who's going to be there that was rude to me last time I saw them. I'll accept that. Okay, I feel that. I feel like I don't like this person, but I'm going to accept. I don't have full information. Maybe they didn't mean to be rude. Maybe they were
Yeah.
just having a hard day, and I'm going to let it go, and I'm going to show up to this show with a service mentality. How can I build up the other comedians? How can I build up the audience? Even if my set doesn't do as well as I want, I can be a great presence to the other comedians. Tell them, hey, man, that joke is killer. You need to do that more often. And it gives you so much peace when
Yeah.
you can get into that in a service mentality.
Yeah, I mean, there's something really to be said about forgiveness too.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
which is a similar thing.
Yeah.
Because maybe it's a little different. Because I guess some people could probably just drop the anger and be like,
Yeah.
I don't forgive them, but fuck it, I'm not
Yeah,
going to
yeah,
listen to
right,
them
right,
anymore.
Right.
But like and this kind of comes from a religious thing too. But it's like forgiveness is a gift for you, like for
Yes,
yourself.
Yes.
Because what I heard this quote the other day, and it's like
I think I know.
it's like anger or jealousy is the only thing that poisons its own container, right?
Yes,
It's the only
and that,
poison
well, a
that-
similar thing on that is unforgiveness is like drinking poison and expecting someone else to die. Which
that's
is
a good way to put it.
So that's exactly how it feels.
Yeah.
It's like I'm all stirred up. I'm not writing comedy. I'm not moving forward in my life because I'm
Right.
all stirred up about what this person did to me, when if I could just let it go. And forgiveness doesn't mean you say it's okay. It's just I am going to put the internal locus of control, get it back within me and just not perseverate on these negative
It's not
feelings.
worth the energy.
Yeah, it's like now I am moving forward in my life. But yeah, when you hold on to that, it really is like drinking poison and expecting that person who's wronged you to die.
Right.
It just doesn't get you anywhere.
Yeah, I like that metaphor a lot better. Yeah. That's a perfect way to put it. Wow. This is we've covered a lot.
We have. And by the way, I wanted to say something earlier on when we were talking about the Austin comics
Yeah.
and the new LA people who are in here. I feel like one perspective I can bring, because I've been in multiple different industries. I've been in high tech and in the publishing world and in the radio world, and then now this world. And all of those industries, I was there when they went through tectonic changes.
Yeah, you're
Like,
there
there's
for the crash when
yeah,
you were in
right.
tech.
Yeah, why am I always there? You're right. I'm always there for every time. Maybe it's me. I mean, I am the common denominator here.
Get out of
Because like when
Austin.
I first started, when I was writing my first book, this had evened out by the time it was published, but that's when Kindle really first exploded.
Oh,
And so a
yeah.
lot of people were like, well, what does this mean? Is writing even still a thing? What do book deals mean? And I cannot recommend to comics strongly enough, especially that our industry is ever changing now, especially post-COVID. We're still working it out. A lot of cities are like our city. It's just a different scene. It's a different world. One of the best life skills you can possibly have is one, what we just said, service mentality, forgiveness, like internal locus of control, that. But the second one is embrace the change. Learn to love change. You know, if you're an Austin comic and you woke up one day and this is not the same city and this is not the same comedy scene and there are all these new faces and some of them are not returning your texts and you're not getting booked on the shows you want, find what is positive about the change and embrace it, because I've seen this in radio, I've seen it in publishing, and I've seen it in tech. The people who resist change and who see it as a bad thing, they are not around anymore. I knew plenty of people who had tech startups back in like 2003, 2004, 2005 that now they are not working in tech anymore because they resisted change. They would complain about, like, well, social media is like that just sucks. Well, I don't want social media to be a thing because we had a web-based product. Well, now they're not around anymore.
Did you know social media can aid your web-based product,
Right,
sir?
exactly.
It's actually probably a good thing.
And I was around. I saw that, like when Instagram first took off, when Facebook first took off. I saw this, and I saw people resist it, and they dragged their heels. But then the people who said, this changes our business model. This is a different thing. But wow, let's look at this. There are a lot of advantages that come with it. There are all these new ways to connect with people. This is cool. They are millionaires.
Yeah.
And the people who were like, I don't like this newfangled. I don't like this one bit. A lot of them have careers they're not happy with.
Yeah.
So I very much see this in comedy, and I felt kind of prepared by the COVID apocalypse in comedy because of what I've seen in, especially in tech, but also in publishing and radio, is you will be so much more at peace with your career if you can start to see change as a good thing and ride the wave like a surfer, rather than resisting the wave and let it knock you over and you're like drowning on the beach. Get a surfboard and ride it. Have fun with it. Have fun with the change.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like, there's no reason why a lot of the most famous comedians in the world moving here is going to be a bad thing.
Right.
Like, there's just not.
Right.
You probably stayed in Austin because you loved it here. 90% of the stuff you love about the town is still here. There's just probably
now
a
it's
bigger
just on the map,
population.
right.
And the bigger population is probably the only real huge change. And the riding the wave is what I noticed even with COVID. The companies that were able to pivot and figure out online options or whatever, like, they're the ones that thrived through COVID. And then everyone else has like kind of been floundering, and now they're finally picking back up. But it's...
Well, I saw it in my own career that when, I quit my freaking job to do a comedy tour, and when it became very clear that was not going to happen, obviously, I did have some time of despair. Like, wow, things are going to be shut down longer than I thought. This is terrifying. I was really, really bummed about it. And then I remembered that from the tech world. I was like, all right, how do I ride this wave? So I started doing social media sketches. And they started going viral. And it was this whole new form of comedy that now I'm like, oh, thank God. Like, I love doing this. And it has grown my fan base enormously.
We didn't even hype you up as a TikTok star. She's TikTok famous.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I never promoted TikTok to my current fan base. And I've got I'm approaching 50,000 fans that brand new, none of my current fans. Yeah, I know. And I need to be careful because I'm like, hey, we should do shots together. And I'm talking to a 14-year-old boy. Still getting used to the TikTok landscape there. But yeah, when I remembered to ride the wave
Yeah.
instead of resisting the wave, I have been given this gift of like, I love doing social media sketches so much that I'm almost annoyed to get back out on tour. I'm like, but when will I do my stupid sketches in front of my, like, how can I talk smack about what's going on with like the royal family or with moms or with the stimulus checks if I'm on some stupid tour?
Yeah.
And so it just goes to show that if I had stayed in that place of resisting the change and bemoaning the fact that I bet my entire career on touring and it was instantaneously shut down, if I had resisted that wave instead of riding it, I would never have found what has turned out to be one of the greatest gifts I've ever been given in my career is this sketch thing. And I
Yeah.
love it so much. I have so much fun with it. And it's something I can control. I don't need an agent. All I need is my phone and a social media account.
Yeah.
And it's a great way to connect with my fans. And so that's been such a great personal lesson to me. And don't resist the wave, ride the wave.
I love it. One final thing I think I'd like to ask you, and this is going to be super vague. So,
Yeah, good.
what are you excited about
In general in life?
in life, career, general, anything?
I am I mean, I'm really excited to see what happens, especially in the comedy world
Yeah.
post-COVID.
Yeah.
One of the things we both have in common is we thrive on risk. You know,
Yeah.
this is the person who's walking through horrible neighborhoods in St. Louis alone. Like, we thrive on risk. We thrive on change. It doesn't mean it's not uncomfortable. Like,
Right.
it scares me. But I like being scared.
Yeah.
And like I've often thought my dad was a Halo, high altitude, low opening instructor in special forces. Basically, in special forces during the Vietnam era, he trained other guys to jump out of planes at very high altitude at night into a jungle in enemy territory. That is a very high tolerance for risk. That is a very tremendous love of risk. And I really think that I've inherited that, and it just plays
Yeah.
out. Like, my version of jumping out of an airplane at night is like going up at the Vulcan, where I'm like the only female. I keep my comedy clean because I have a suburban audience, and that's my version of jumping out of a plane at night. And so I've really, it has taken me years to get here, but I've learned to love risk and uncertainty. It makes life fun.
Mm-hmm.
And life is boring when everything is the same and even if you're like making money and being successful, it's boring. And
Yeah.
so I like it when life is interesting. And being in the comedy scene in Austin, Texas, in post-COVID, it is terrifying.
Insane.
It's nothing but uncertainty. We're all walking on uneven ground.
Yeah.
But that is what makes life fun. And that
It's
is what
so
I'm really
good.
excited about and looking forward to, just seeing how this all shakes out.
Oh, me too. Well, is there anywhere that you'd like people to follow you? Anything you want them to check out?
Yeah, Facebook is dead to me because they keep not letting me post sketches. So let's pretend I do not have a Facebook account. If you're 14, you're welcome to follow me on TikTok with my other 14-year-old fans. I feel like, if I do, like, if I do some shows at like some roller skating rinks, I think the TikTok fans are going to show up big. My big place though is Instagram. That's my favorite app. I am always on Instagram stories, and
Truly.
that's truly always, and that's where I do my sketches and things like that. So I am Jennifer Fulwiler on Instagram. I realize that you cannot spell Fulwiler, but if you can take your best guess, I'm verified. So I
She
have
is
that. I'm
verified.
verified. I will show
And she
up.
has this bright red hair in her profile
Yeah.
picture.
Yeah, I did. I really colorized that.
That
to
looks
make
so
it pop.
good. She's got like a blue background,
Yeah.
bright red hair. It's gorgeous.
Well, you can imagine I did a spreadsheet, and I literally did. I had a spreadsheet.
Which
of what-
icons work the best on Instagram?
I did, and I chose the Instagram icon that based on I ran a regression on some data, and the data pointed to kind of a teal blue background with some gradient. I'm not kidding.
We
And-
didn't
and
even
with
we didn't even
colorized-
discuss this is how you also figured out the best cadence of like hour long. Like you had like
Yeah.
a spreadsheet of how long to go
I
between laughs.
Yeah, my Amazon
And,
my
like-
Amazon special that's another reason I got my hours so quickly. I put it in a spreadsheet. I categorize the laughs on a scale of 1 to 5, and then I did a conditional formatting where it automatically made it red, yellow, like white or gray, depending on the laugh level. And then also conditional formatting on the time in between laughs so that I could have a visual. When I would zoom out on the spreadsheet, it was like, wow, we've got a lot of gray right there. Like I am really losing the audiences. So I need to do something about
Yeah.
that. That's how you get an hour of material when you have 6 homeschooled kids and a 2-hour daily live national radio show in a matter of months. It's spreadsheets, guys. So see what you think
Spreadsheets.
of my Instagram icon. The spreadsheet told me that was the right Instagram icon to
Yeah. And then your specials on
do.
Amazon.
It is. Yeah, the Naughty Corner.
The Naughty Corner
and if
tour.
you just search for, no, not tour, but
Oh, well.
yeah, if you just search Naughty Corner, you will be surprised at the variety of products that Amazon has for sale.
So
I
the
didn't know
Naughty
they sold.
Corner.
And yeah, you can imagine my fans, my little suburban, faith but church going fans, like putting Naughty Corner into Amazon. That was fun.
By the way,
That was
my
fun.
emceeing, that was the joke that killed the most. I would get so mad every single night. I would just be like, hey, by the way, we're using hashtag Naughty Corner Tour. Don't use hashtag Naughty Corner because you don't know
Yeah.
what you're going to find on there. And they'd be
lot of tension around
Oh
that
my
one.
God.
That wasn't already in my search history.
Yeah, right. Dang.
Yeah.
Well, awesome. I've loved having you on the show today.
This
Thank
is
you
so much fun. You're great at this, Allison.
Thank you.
You are really good at this.
Thank
I'm
you.
excited. I'm a new listener of the
You're
podcast.
definitely going to be on again at some point.
Fantastic.
We
I
actually
can't
need to
wait.
plug our friends over here, these vitamin cocktails we were
Which
drinking.
are delicious. They're so
Yeah,
good.
we're drinking some MSW Nutrition Boost. It's a multivitamin you can feel. It's tasty, and you can use the code DETALKS, DETALKS, at mswnutrition.com for 15% off. But I think that's a wrap for us. Follow
right.
Jennifer Fulwiler on Instagram, Naughty Corner Tour on Amazon.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, this was fun.
Hell
Appreciate
yeah.
it.
Thank you.